Hi, everyone. I am Uriah Young with the Philadelphia Writers Conference, and it is great to be with you again today. And it's even greater to be here today with our guest. On our Skype session, we have a Philly favorite in so many different ways. The current Poet Laureate of Philadelphia, Yolanda Wisher, is with us today. How you doing, Yolanda?
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you, and we're looking forward to you coming to the Philadelphia Writers Conference. And how's it feel to be the opening speaker at this year's conference?
Oh man, it feels like, I'm growing up, I'm grown. It feels like, returning to a room full of people who've been a big part of my journey in Philadelphia. But, now having more to say than I did maybe 20 years ago when I first got here.
Well, I'm sure that the people who are going to be in the audience, that they're going to be hanging on to your every word, knowing that you're in the company of the likes of the great Sonia Sanchez. And before we get to the questions, I do want to share a little bit of your background so that people who are meeting you for the first time will know a little bit about you. So, Yolanda is the third poet laureate for the city. She's an educator. And her book, A Monk Eats an Afro, is currently available online. Each of these topics, in addition to other cool stuff, will be brought up in the interview. And you've also done a lot of things with your activism and just going to different schools to speak, inspire, and educate kids. No wonder that you were chosen to be the poet laureate. So, once again, it's great to have you.
Thank you.
So let's get to the first question. Let's go back to when you were a youngin. What role did poetry play for you, Yolanda, when you were growing up?
Yeah, it was my secret spot, my comfort zone. A lot of my first poems started out in a diary that I kept. It had a key because I had some little sisters. So it was my kind of secret spot to go to when I needed to just get things off my little chest or try to understand what was going on in my world. Sometimes it was just recording what happened to me that day. Like we went to the grocery store and we bought X, Y, and Z, and I did this at track practice. Um, so it was just a way of marking my life. Then it became a way for me to get people to hear me, to get people to notice me as a little black girl in a predominantly white suburban school. And so I stood out because I wrote poetry. Um, and people pushed me and nurtured me along the path of poetry and started putting more poems and poets in front of me. And eventually that just led to some amazing opportunities that, got me to where I am today.
Do you still have that locked diary? Do you still have that?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm kind of a hoarder when it comes to poetry, journals and books. So yeah, I keep that one in a safe, away away from fire and
I
worlds who
was
live
going to
in.
ask you if it's behind you in your massive bookshelf. No,
No,
definitely
it's not
not
on the
there.
shelves. It's not open to the public.
Yeah. Now you said that growing up that your schools or wherever you were exposed to poetry, people, different poets were thrown in front of you and that gave you inspiration. Can you give us an idea of some poets that have inspired you along the way and how they inspired you?
Well, one of the first poets that people put in front of me was Phyllis Wheatley, and mostly because she started out writing as a young girl. So I was exposed to her poems pretty early on, but there was a block with the language that she used. I aspired to be as learned as she wrote, but as a little 10-year-old, I couldn't get with that, all the time. But I admired her story. There were women poets on my mother's bookshelf in the den with the washing machine, and those were a lot of women from the Black Arts Movement um, in the '60s and the '70s. People like Nikki Giovanni, Marie Evans, Sonia Sanchez, um, and novelists like Alice Walker and Toni Morrison. And so I gravitated towards these Black women writers and their stories. Their lives were like blueprints for me that I was like, maybe I could do that. I wasn't so sure, but I was totally entranced by, the story, the stories of Zora Neale Hurston's life and just how fantastic a life as a Black woman she seemed to be living. And, through them started dreaming about the possibilities for my own life.
So the poets that you just listed, iconic, remarkable talent. We all know that music has a connection to poetry. Your book, A Monk Eats an Afro, definitely has a musical connection. And I did the research and I saw that Monk refers to the one and only Thelonious Monk, the great jazz pianist, straight no chaser, and he's in the same realm of the great Art Tatum, another great pianist. So my question to you is, how would you describe the relationship that poetry has to music, in your opinion?
It's a marriage, if I can think about it that way. I'm married to a double bass player, and I feel like a lot of our relationship as a couple has been about this intersection of poetry and music, and how do we get to, be on equal footing with each other when we're working together. And it's a collaboration, but it's work. It's real work. There's preparation involved, but there's also just a letting go and a looseness and a spontaneity and improvisation. It's definitely a romance, but it can also be a battle, and sometimes it feels like, for me as a poet performing with musicians, it's the same kind of energy I used to get playing basketball in high school, just doing a pickup game in Abington with some of the guys I used to play with, and the adrenaline of that, and the team, and the improv, and all of that energy for me lives in that interplay between me as the poet, vocalizing, trying to find my own instrument in my voice, in collaboration with these other voices. So it's thrilling. It's a thrilling romance, I would say.
I just had a flashback to a movie from the 90s. I'm sure you've seen it, with, oh man, it's escaped. Love Jones. Love Jones with, was it Darius, or what was his name?
I think that was
Lorenz Tate. Lorenz Tate and
yeah.
Nia Long.
Yep.
That was a great movie, and poetry definitely was part of the plot. And you mentioned your husband earlier. He's a teacher, but he plays bass. Does he still play with a band? Does he still go out and play on the weekends?
Yeah, he plays with my band.
Oh, excuse me.
I mean, I would say it's our band. Although a lot of times I'm fronting it. It's Yolanda Wisher and the Afro Eaters, after the book, or Yolanda Wisher and the Quick Fix, if we got to really just throw something together. But at the heart of it is this relationship between a poet and a bass player, and that rhythm, that narrative, the bass. I grew up playing the cello, and so the bass for me is part of that creative process. A bass line is part of how a lot of poems start to walk and start to meander. So for me, the heart of the band is me and Mark, my husband, the bass player. And then we add on to that with other musicians.
Yolanda, I think when it comes to writing, it can be kind of a solitary type of activity. I mean, you're writing and you're putting those words on paper. But I'm sure if you had the opportunity to collaborate with another poet, I'm sure you would jump at the chance. So my question to you is, if you could collaborate with a poet, past or present, who would you collaborate with?
Oh man, there's so many.
We have a little time.
But I don't want to offend anyone living, so maybe I'll go with the dead. There are a lot of people on these bookshelves I would have loved to just. I mean, I don't even need collaboration. I would have just loved one conversation over a cup of tea, if that counts as collaboration of some sort. But, I think about people like Jane Cortez, who had a band called the Fire Spitters and traveled really widely, doing her own brand of poetry and performance. I would have loved to just be one of her backup singer poets, or just that woman in the back with a triangle, acting for the beat. I would have really loved to know somebody like Bob Kaufman, although, I'm not sure how wide his social circle was, or if he would have just taken to some girl showing up like, hey, what's up, Bob? Let's do something. There's not many performances of him on record. So that kind of enchants me that, what would that have been like to do a reading with Bob Kaufman? But I think about, too, the musicians and singers that I would have loved to meet and collaborate with, Nina Simone or, Abby Lincoln, Monk, Bessie Smith. I mean, any of these people, Robert Johnson. I have some very poignant questions I would like to ask them about their practice and their lives and the mythology that surrounds them.
Wow, those are some big time names, and I can only imagine what you guys would strike up in conversation. But I did just have an image of you with the triangle. It's going to stay with me for a while. I'm just letting you know. When I see you at the conference, I might bring a triangle and I'll let you play.
It'll bring everybody in. Food. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, being the Poet Laureate of Philadelphia, that's a big deal, and I think it's something that young people, if they're going to strive to really get involved with poetry and try to just ride that creative spirit of expression, getting to that position where you are, it's an honor. And my question to you is, when you found out, was it this dramatic reaction? What was it like when you found out that you were going to be the top poet of Philadelphia?
It was a phone call from Beth Brandt, who is the head of the Poet Laureate Governing Committee that, in addition to the mayor, helps select the Poet Laureate. And I think at first she left me a voicemail, and it was just right around that time when you're supposed to hear back or when they say you hear back. So when I saw her voicemail, I remember starting to get like heart palpitations a little bit, like, like holding my phone. So I was like, okay, I called her right back. And then she told me, and I was upstairs, just outside my office, and I just did one of those like, yeah, like the ground, kind of like, just felt like my whole self kind of felt that, yes, I did it, I had a good feeling about it, just having put in the application. There just sometimes when you submit something that it's your time. And so I felt like it was my time. And I felt in that call that I was seen, that the other people in the committee, the mayor knew it's her time too. She shined. So I think I put on some Missy Elliott and just rocked out after the call.
Okay.
Sometimes there's nothing to do but just dance,
Yeah.
And for me, I tried to just celebrate it, in that moment.
Missy Elliott. Wow.
Yeah.
So many hits that she had. I can only imagine which one you chose to play.
Something more current.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were exuberant. You did a yes. How did your husband Mark? How did he take it? And how did you guys celebrate? If you don't mind me.
Well, he was the first person I called, and he was at work teaching 5th and 6th graders, and I think he just like exclaimed wherever he was, like yes, and then sent me some really sweet texts of congratulations, and yeah, I think we went out to dinner. I think my son, it was really cool the day of the being inaugurated, and as the Poet Laureate, when you go to a little ceremony at City Hall. My husband and my son went with me, and I was getting ready in the bathroom, just putting some makeup on, and my son comes in the bathroom, and his tooth literally flew out of his mouth. He had
Oh boy.
He had this loose tooth for 2 weeks that was just trying to come out, and it just
Perfect timing.
Right. And so for me, the day that I became the Poet Laureate is also the day that Theo lost, that tooth. And so it was just great to have the mommy moment, this career moment, a life moment. My great uncle was there to see me. He was one of the first people who ever called me a poetess or gave me a Phyllis Wheatley book. So there were a lot of circles that kind of came to this really nice sense of closure. And for me, it's been really, the work for me has been to look forward, to look more ahead now, like what's beyond this? What do I really want to go after? How do I want to be challenged after this great opportunity?
That's a great story with the tooth flying out in the bath. Did you take the did you show the mayor the tooth, your son's tooth?
No, I should have taken the tooth, made some jewelry out of it, made
Oh,
it part of the whole day.
yeah.
But, we just took a picture and yeah, Theo's tooth became part of it. And he was proud, he was, the pride, the book I wrote, Monk Eats an Afro, is dedicated to Theo. And it was really special to be able to become the Poet Laureate and have my son see that as something possible, something that his mom did, and to be part of that, that day.
I mean, that definitely sounds like a special memory that you will never forget, as well as your son and husband. Speaking of making memories, you're coming to the conference in June. You are the opening speaker, and I'm sure you're going to just tear it down with whatever poetry you're going to read and whatever message you have to share. So, my question to you is, as you are looking forward to this opportunity, what message do you hope is going to resonate with the audience that day when you speak at the conference?
I've thought about it, but I haven't really written what I'm going to say yet. But I guess what I would love to leave people with, and something I've been thinking about a lot in the last couple of months, is that we really need to fight for poetry. I think we all get comfortable with, seeing poetry on commercials or woven into all these advertising campaigns. It can be marketable in some ways. Lots of websites and outlets and conferences and festivals. But I feel like in my work as Poet Laureate, I've still had to say to people, this is why we need poetry. I still have to convince people about why we need poetry. Yeah, there's a lot. I hope I communicate the power of poetry, not just for the personal sphere and the personal domain, but for the public realm and the possibilities that poetry could have in the public realm for poets and communities, whether it's through teaching, performance, public art, community or civic engagement. I feel like there's still a lot of unexplored territory where we get beyond it being just, oh, there's some cute poetry, to there's some really powerful impact being made in the lives of people in this city.
I definitely am. I'm on board with that 100%. Not just because I'm a teacher, but because the reasons that you stated, poetry, language, the use of it, the manipulation of it to create, it is part of our society. It is part of marketing. It is part of advertising. I think, matter of fact, the first Skype session that I did was with a poet. His name is Brian Finelli. And I interviewed Brian, I think 2 years ago for another project that I was a part of. And I just remember him, Yolanda, being the most concise interview I had ever had. And I had interviewed over 40 people. And I'm wondering, how is he just nailing every question and just summarizing at the end? And it's because of poetry. It's the conciseness of it. He was a journalist too, so that probably helps. But the reality is, the message that you share that day, I'm sure people are going to feel it and they're going to take it and run with it. So the last question for the Skype session, Yolanda, is this. What do you have coming up? Other than the Philadelphia Writers Conference, do you have a manuscript? Are you hanging out with the mayor somewhere in Philly? What's going on?
Not hanging out with the mayor, but working on a book, a second book of poems, and doing a lot of genealogical research. It's a book about my family's history in a couple different places in the United States. Ambler, PA, which was once the asbestos capital of the world. Also parts of Virginia, where my mom and my dad's family originate. And so I'm doing a lot of research into where my family's origins are, and also how to turn the search for that and the struggles to search for that into poetry. Um, I'm also working on a CD project with my band, and would love to just create not even a CD, but a vinyl record, really, of some of my work. Because I grew up with vinyl records and liner notes and record players are coming back. And so I would love to just create some art as artifact through a sound recording on vinyl, you know.
Well, we wish you the best of luck with your book that's coming out soon and the CD that, or excuse me, the record that you're going to be creating with your great band. And I look forward to seeing you and listening to your speech at the Philadelphia Writers Conference. And I look forward to talking to you and hanging out a little bit.
Thanks. I've enjoyed
Absolutely.
this. Thank
All
you.
right. So with that, everyone, with Yolanda Wisher, this is Uriah Young for the Philadelphia Writers Conference. I'll see you next time. But oh, by the way, if you haven't registered and you do want to come out and you want to hear and meet and greet Yolanda Wisher, our conference is June 9th, 10th, and 11th. I do believe there is room for registers. So if you go to www.pwcwriters.org, you can find all the information you need to know about that special weekend. Come out, network, get those that creativity sharpened with some of the writers who are going to be in the building, and I'll see you there hopefully. So we'll see you next time. Take care. Thanks a lot.